Cultural assimilation is the process by which an individual who is part of an underrepresented group is slowly robbed of their individuality and converted into someone who more privileged groups find acceptable. An effective example of cultural assimilation is the treatment of indigenous populations by colonizers. When a colonizing culture takes an area that belongs to indigenous groups, there are two things that happen. The first is that the colony physically restricts the indigenous groups by taking land and displacing the population. The second is that the indigenous groups, after losing their homes and much of their land, are forced to integrate into the culture of the colony, thereby subjecting themselves to scrutiny and risking loss of culture. An example of this is the representation of indigenous groups in Canada, and how some detest being referred to as Canadians, preferring to be referred to by different terms because of their ancestral connections to the land that predate the colonial development of the country. This is an exhausting problem to deal with, as having to constantly explain or justify your culture is extremely difficult, and as a result, some people simply abandon their cultural practices, resulting in a loss of self, simply to alleviate the pain of having to deal with that scrutiny, which is an example of epistemic silencing.
What's important to consider from all this is that social discrimination, be it the death of a culture or lack of social representation, is a phenomenon that occurs constantly and all around us. It is important that languages and cultures have the capacity to shift to allow for individuals to accurately express themselves as time goes on. And it is important that cultures learn to coexist without one completely consuming the other. One way to not perpetuate norms or impose your own perspectives is to simply ask what others would like to be referred to as. This simply avoids miscommunication and microaggressions that would otherwise hamper discussion. These are not easy problems to solve, but they start with each individual actively making an effort to learn what others in their community need. And